The real reason that your relationship has a 99% chance of being shit. It starts out really great, you fall in love with someone, you imagine it's always going to be that great, but it never is. It always turns to shit, unless you know this important fact. You will get triggered, and if you don't know why you get triggered, how to recover it, and how to be relational, you're going to be in a pile of shit for years, unhappily married. So what do I mean? You remember sometime you got triggered, someone said something, or car cut off in front of you, or whatever. The thing about triggers is they're unique to each of us. There's no such thing as everyone gets triggered by the same thing, or everyone is attracted to the same kind of person. It's unique to us. Have you ever wondered why? Why do some women go for abusive men? Why do some women go for men they can control? Why do some men put up with abuse? So there are two parts of this turning to shit. One is the kind of person that we think is okay and that we're attracted to. And two, what triggers us. And it gets even worse if you say something that triggers me, I react, and now you're triggered and we're off to the races. So here are some things I want to teach you, and you can get this information by following Terry Real's work, or anybody who works with family stuff. I'm going to get into family stuff because that's the only place you can heal this. Okay? So this is what happens. Everybody in childhood, we idolize our parents, whether they're good or bad. Whether they abuse us or not, we are dependent on them. So we emotionally bond to them, and they hurt us in various ways because they're human. It can be a little bit, but it can be a lot. They can be really abusive, or they can just be a little bit neglectful. There's a whole range of it. If you had good enough parents, that's fine, but most of us didn't have good enough parents. So what happens, the wounded child is the first 7 years of life. And then children are very smart, and you're very smart. So if you have a parent who's volatile, that's very wounding because you don't feel safe in your home. It doesn't feel safe to have a parent who could go off at any moment. They could be alcoholic, or they could just feel entitled to go off on people. They have trouble with their own temper because of their childhood. So you're a smart kid, so what do? You can develop a number of strategies. One of your strategies might be, I'll be the perfect child. I'll be the perfect child so mom and dad won't yell at me so much. Maybe if I'm perfect enough, I won't get yelled at. That can work pretty well. But it takes away your childhood, and it's called the adaptive child. If I'm perfect, people won't leave me or get mad at me. They'll love me if I'm just perfect enough. Another strategy for kids with volatile parents is they learn strategies to tell in advance if a parent is going to go off. They get very good at reading people's emotions. As adults, they call themselves empaths. It's not actually healthy to be an empath and be always tuned in to other people's emotions, but it keeps you safe as a child. You need these horrible parents to love you because you're dependent on them. So that sets up a very uncomfortable situation. I don't like how they're treating me, but I need them, so I'm going to devise a strategy. And kids don't do this consciously. So just from working with people and watching couples counseling, this is where I'm coming from, and studying childhood trauma and relationships. So just see, what you can get out of this video. If my parents are constantly going off on me, I have to get really good reading their emotions. And that's why these kids often end up in school with ADD. They can't focus because they're so busy scanning everything. Their brain has become a scanning brain. These ways that children adapt are very important. They keep you safe. So you have to love your adaptive child because you need it to adapt. You're very smart. And the way that you adapt structures your brain. Brain nerves that fire together, wire together. So now you've learned to go through life looking at people's feelings, always for safety, or going through life as being perfect, so that you're safe. That's just, you don't even know you're doing it, it's subconscious. So these kind of videos are kind of to wake you up. I'm going to go through a few more, so hopefully more of you can get something out of this for yourselves, because we all had different parents and different adaptive strategies. So in a volatile home, you might have one child that becomes the perfect child. You might have another child that is very empathetic and reads the emotions and then protects the siblings. I see dad starting to drink. I'll be damned if I let him beat my little sister. I'm only 5 years old, but I'm going to take her down in the basement and protect her. And later he becomes an adult who rages at his wife because he still has that inner anger against, I'll be damned. Every time his wife makes a request, it reminds him of his abusive dad. And he's like, I'll be damned if you try to tell me what to do, for example. But he goes for 20 years of his marriage not knowing why he rages. So this is why this is so important. You might have another child who becomes the clown or the rebellious child. Well, if I'm just rebellious or funny, it'll take the attention off of my parents fighting and they'll focus it on me. So there are a lot of different strategies. Now, if you had parents who abandoned you, say they were alcoholics, they actually left you. A lot of parents do leave their kids. Or maybe you just felt you were left. Your parents got divorced and it felt like they abandoned you, or you were adopted and you feel abandoned. So then your strategies could be, I'm not going to let people get too close because people are dangerous. They could leave me. I'm not going to let anyone get too close. I'm not going to get into a relationship. I'll just use women for sex, or maybe I don't want them at all. It's not safe. Or it could be, I'm going to just get into relationships with people who need me, because if they're super needy, they won't leave me. But after a couple years, their neediness gets very annoying. So that's often the thing that attracted you to them is the thing you don't want. Another strategy could be controlling. Try to control your partner. If you can control them enough, they won't leave you. Or if you can control yourself enough, if I could just be, the perfect husband, if I can just have my looks maxed, this is the manosphere, guys. If I can looks max and body max and make enough money and be good in bed and have a good career, a woman won't leave me. These are all strategies. So the first thing is kind of find out what your strategy is. And you got to love your strategy, guys. You got to make friends with your strategy. It's so important that you have compassion for that little child that adapted. You got to love that part. Make friends with it, okay? It's not a bad thing. We all have it. That's the thing. We all have it, and it's going to keep coming up. Let's talk about guys who cheat. I'm going to use elderly advice as an example from what he said in his videos. His dad was a big cheater. And in fact, his dad has told his mom, he found out as an adult that his dad had told his mom, I'm not a relationship guy. I'm a player. I'm for the streets. And she fell in love with him anyway due to her own issues. She went for unavailable men. That's maybe all the intimacy she could handle. And he remembers as a little boy, dad would come around and mom would be so excited. And after he left, she would be in bed crying for days. So heartbroken. And he saw his mom's heart get broken with this guy who just used her for sex. I mean, she relented to it, of course. She relented to it. But as a little boy, he saw daddy really hurts mommy and mommy's really hurt by men, and I'm never going to be like that. So what did he do? He became a player, but he didn't do what his dad did. He didn't know at the time that his dad said, I don't want a relationship, but he decided that he wasn't going to hurt women like his dad hurt women. So he would just be, he was a huge player, but he would tell them, I'm just having fun. That way he felt he wasn't hurting them. But see, he became exactly like his dad. He didn't want a relationship. Relationships aren't safe, and this is what people do. You have an adaptive child, yet you also model your parents, even the parent you didn't like. Even the parent whose behavior you didn't like, you model them or you react against it. So you might be like, I'm never going to be a cheater like my dad. Okay, that could be one. Or you could end up being just like him, but it's subconscious and you don't even know it. I'm thinking about the guys that go, well, I just like variety. Well, there's a skill to being in a relationship, and there's a quality of caring about the relationship. But if growing up you saw your dad playing around, or you were taught that a real man has a lot of women, if you saw your mom controlling your dad, you're like, I'll never let a woman control me. You might decide that you need variety because you're rebelling against what you saw or copying what you saw. Okay, so another strategy is, like my strategy, let's go into my strategy. I would pick men who didn't show too much emotion because my father didn't show too much emotion. And I thought men who show too much emotion are too feminine. So I wasn't comfortable with emotions. Also, I saw my codependent mother like trying to be very pleasing. She always just wanted to be pleasing to everyone. And I took on my role as putting up with. I saw my mom put up with my dad. So when I was unhappy in my marriage, I thought, I just have to learn how to put up with it. I also saw her give the silent treatment when she was upset. So my ex-husband and I, we would use the silent treatment on each other. We weren't fighters. We would just shut down and retreat. So we could go for days at a time without talking to each other. And that was my strategy. Also, I had the experience of, my mom wasn't allowed to ask for anything, and she always had to hurry up. So that was, I think, where that came from me in bed, that I felt like I had to hurry up and come. I had to hurry up. Because I'm trying to see where my stuff comes from. Where did I learn that I have to hurry up? Where did I learn that people are going to get mad if I have feelings? If people are going to get mad that I have feelings, I'm going to pick people who don't expect me to have feelings. My strategy for when my needs weren't met the last 3 years of my marriage was fawning. How can I get you to love me? How can I get you to open up to me? It's a little bit controlling and it's a little bit fawning. Like, please love me. Not very desperately, but why won't you love me? And he was walled off, so I wasn't extreme, but the point is, I didn't realize what it was. I didn't realize all this at the time, so I kept thinking, how can I get this guy to open up? And, he just didn't want to, but my strategy was, how can I get you to open up? I think that for him, I reminded him of his mother, so when I made a request, it probably reminded him of his controlling mother, and he would get triggered and be like, well, I'm not going to do what she wants. So that's why seeing your pattern is so important. Once you see your pattern, it can really clear things up. You can start looking for different kinds of people. For example, there's some women that always end up with guys who cheat. So they become very careful to not find a guy like that, but they always do. Now, my experience is I'm always like, why don't I worry about men cheating? The reason I don't worry about men cheating is because I have this deep down belief that a man who's into me won't leave me. Because even when my parents divorced, my dad didn't leave. He kept wanting to see us. He kept loving us. I think I just feel it in my bones, like a man who's into me isn't going to leave me. But if your dad did, if he had left me, I would be worried too. It would make sense that I would be worried. That's what I saw, that's what I experienced. Okay, so this video, I would just like you guys to start thinking about, how you see men and how you see women. All men are, all women are. One of my things is, I like to be left alone because in my mind, people always want something from me. People always want something from me, so I'm better off without them. Or I can't, people aren't safe. So I've been stretching my own comfort zone, noticing all this, practicing with my friends, practicing with my clients, but just sharing okay, so now a lot of you are going to be protective against your parents. It's taken me all this time to realize that it wasn't my dad that was causing my problems, it was my mom. I modeled after my mom a lot. But I also modeled after my dad a little bit. So, and this is hard because people are naturally protective of their parents. So that's why it's so important to honestly look at where your parents went wrong and what you're copying, what they did to you, and how you adapted, your adaptive child. And because of the way you adapt it, it's going to have certain kinds of reactions. It's very interesting when I talk to my friends about something, that annoys them. And I'm like, why does that annoy you? That doesn't annoy me at all. Or something that annoys me and it doesn't annoy them at all. And that started waking me up to the fact that there isn't one thing that's annoying. We all get triggered in different ways. Now, with my friends, if I get triggered, I can calm myself down. What I do is I put my feelings kind of aside and I think with my brain about being relational. That's a skill. It's an art. Not to just react. And in your relationships, you will react unless you do this work. That's why 99% of relationships are shit. They're going to smile on Instagram and Facebook, but behind closed doors, it's shit. I want to save you from that same thing. So, first thing is find your adaptive child, look at your losing strategy, and then learn how to calm yourself down. And start thinking about the kind of people you're looking for and if that's the kind of people you want to be in relationship with. One video I made recently was about what can a man do for me? That's my work. I've been so focused on what I can do for a man, what I need to put up with, what I need to be okay with. For me to even say, what can a man do for me, seemed very scary. I'm like, people are going to judge me as being entitled. That's all my own stuff. When it comes to being in an intimate relationship or any kind of friendship, people have to deserve to be in our lives. People have to deserve to be in our lives, and nothing more so than in an intimate relationship. It's the most important relationship. It can raise or lower your cortisol levels. It can create joy or make you miserable, depending on their energy and who they are. So it's important to be super, super choosy, and important to be super skilled at handling ourselves and seeing what is our suitcase full of stuff. If you guys are interested in this kind of work, I would suggest you Google family of origin, internal family systems, trauma, inner child healing, trauma bonding, and go to Terry Real's website, REAL. I'm currently in one of his courses right now, RLT3, and we actually have a live call about the course coming up in a few minutes, so I'm going to get going. I find this behavior modification stuff so fascinating. The good news is, when you wake up to your pattern and you see it, you can rewire your brain and start acting in a whole new way, because your brain is neuroplastic. It's not set in stone. So if you do this work, you can have really satisfying relationships, and your relationship can be a way for you to grow. And that makes it very exciting. It's not fun to be in a relationship where you have the same problems year after year after year for 20 years. And then, you know, these people are like, my parents have been married for 50 years. It's so great. I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. I'm not going to buy that. I don't believe it at all. But anyway, I want to know what you think. Please leave your comments, and thank you for watching my video.